TV presenter and the leader of the Reform Party, Richard Tice. Hello, Richard. Good to see you. And Angela Knight, a former chief executive of the British Banking Association. Good to have you both on the show. Let's start with you, Richard. I believe you feel a close affinity with Nigel Farage because you've been in a very similar position to his.
Well, I have indeed, and I've been liaising closely with Nigel. I had two bank accounts shut down. Our Reform Party account was shut down by Metro exactly 2 years ago. I gave a press conference on it. The penny didn't fully drop back then. And then another digital bank called Tide Bank, they shut an account of mine last year. Both of them claimed commercial reasons. I've submitted subject access requests for their information. Let's see what they've got. But I think once again, Vanessa, Nigel's actually done the nation a great, great service, for which many people may not thank him. But we're now hearing, as a result of all of this, this furore, you just played there the Prime Minister saying that changes might be made. I understand that the City Minister, Andrew Griffiths, has ordered officials to make changes to draft legislation and guidance. So, look, hopefully some change will follow from this. But it's incredibly important because essentially what Coutts Bank did was basically say, and of course they're a subsidiary of NatWest, is that we will determine what you can think, what you can say. And the implications of that, if you roll it forward and if no legal changes were made, are very, very serious indeed for everybody, because you can't operate without a bank account.
Well, on the other hand, Richard, you know, pub landlords are allowed to exclude people because they don't like the cut of their jib. I'm assuming
No, that's completely different, Vanessa. I'm not having that. I'm sorry. You can choose which pub you go to. You cannot exist without a bank account. Most of us now are told we can't have cash. It's a human right to be able to pay bills using a bank account. It's as simple as that. And Nigel's tried 10 other banks. They've all said no. I've had numerous other banks say no.
And when you ask why, they say that it's some kind of commercial reason. But what reason do they give you?
They don't. They say that's all we need to say. We're a private business. We can make a commercial decision. Look, I'm a believer in free markets. But when it comes to your fundamental ability to exist as a human being, that's not a free market. Frankly, it's a bit like having access to water. You can't exist without water. You can't exist without a bank account. It is as simple as that. And
it's not just simple to make, give another name or another address or another something to be about. I mean, people have many bank accounts in many different places.
Vanessa, you're not implying that I would have a fake name and give a fake address.
I was thinking M Mouse, my M Mouse or D Duck, something of that ilk, and then you can have a lovely account and do what you want.
In fairness, Vanessa, they do their KYC very properly.
Oh dear.
And that's all well and good. But we're legal, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens.
Richard, thank you very much. I know you have to get going. Maybe you're looking for a bank account, getting on your bike and looking for a bank account this evening. If so, I hope you find one. Let's bring Angela Knight into this. Angela, Richard argues very passionately that a bank account is a human right. Is he right? Is it?
Well, in part, he is. After all, we run basic bank accounts, or the banks run basic bank accounts, excuse me, in order to get as many people with a bank account as possible. And the reason you do that is, I mean, you use cards. We pay by cards. We don't pay by cash. We don't pay by checks so much. You get discounts if you have direct debits, and all those sorts of things means that today's life is about having a bank account.
And therefore, banks should be prohibited from excluding people on the basis that they don't like their political views, or they don't like their face, or they don't like the way they're dressing, or whatever it is.
Well, let's just sort of run down perhaps what the rules are, because that might be helpful. Yes, there are certain people who are excluded. They are on lists such as terrorist lists and so forth. And this is not just a case here, but it's around the world. And so banks will check to see whether somebody opening an account sits on one of those blacklists or not. And I think that we want them to do that, because just imagine what fuss there would be if they couldn't do that and you could bank, I say a bomber or something like that in this country. So it's perfectly sensible they should do this. But the next thing is what is known as the PEP, the politically exposed person. Now, I'm a PEP, and the reason I'm a PEP is because many years ago, I was a member of Parliament, 1992 to 1997. So I'm 30 years ago. And for some reason, I still sit on a PEP list. That doesn't mean that nobody will give me a bank account. What it does mean is they do extra due diligence on me. And those PEP rules, as I say, have been there a long time. They've been put in place by ourselves and many other countries as well. The key question here is not should we have something called a politically exposed person, but what it needs to do is be proportionate and sensible and reasonable. And the very fact that somebody may express views which don't coincide with the views of a bank or a financial institution or indeed any other institution, if those views are perfectly straightforward and legal, that should not deny them an account. There's an element of wokeism, I suspect, that's got in here, but there's also an element of the way that regulation has crept tighter and tighter in the UK. And so a bank will, the regulators will come in and they'll look at the bank to see, what are the cultural policies that that bank is operating on? And that seems to me that a step too far has been taken. And I'm glad that Nigel has actually highlighted this. But I do want to see us get some sensible outcomes. So yes, the people that we don't want to be banked because of the issues around them, as I say, go back to the blacklist, go back to the terrorists, whatever, we can still deny them a bank account. But that other people who just are, freedom of speech, living their normal lives, may say things that, and may have beliefs that are somewhat different, they should not be banned from having an account.
And how long will it be until that is enforced or enforceable? I mean, you don't like it, Richard Tice doesn't like it, Nigel Farage is furious.
I can give you an answer. I can give you an answer. This is not necessarily the law, it's regulation. Mm-hmm. So right now, what one could do is look at the PEP list and just separate it out into, some which are in the high order and some which are in the low order. And also the regulators stand back from seeing whether a bank is actually sort of behaving according to a certain set of cultural norms. What a bank needs to be able to do is provide a good quality service, and the customer needs to be polite and decent and all those sorts of things. And there is more and more being crept into the regulatory framework, and indeed banks have been taken to task by the regulator for not including some of these things. And it is that creep, that regulatory creep, that can actually be stopped. Yes, I do agree that changing the law is a good idea. I do agree that there needs to be a big consultation that takes place over some of these issues. But you can actually stop regulatory creep by saying, we're just going to stop regulatory creep.